Who do we have on the telephone lines?
Peter.
Welcome, Peter. And Lisa, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Welcome. I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of September the 9th, 2015. And I'd like to say welcome back. It's nice to see everyone's happy faces around that table. Before we get into the meeting, there's just a couple of housekeeping things I want to attend to. First, and I think probably the most important really, is to welcome Alex, our student trustee. So Alex McIsaac, welcome, and we look forward to the next year with you. So welcome to the board. Officially, you've been in the back of the room for a long time. The second piece of housekeeping item is just a reminder to all trustees. The microphones are incredibly sensitive. And so if, for example, Trustee McAllister was asking a question and we were rustling papers, that would pick up the papers and not Trustee McAllister, and we want to hear him. So be very careful with the background noise because it's picked up. The microphones are very, very sensitive. And the other thing before we begin, I just want to say this. I could leave it to the end, but I think it's important to get in right now. I want to say this on behalf of all of the Board of Trustees. I want to thank a number of people right now. I want to thank all of the custodians. The hard work that has gone in to prepare these schools to make them look the way they do on the first day of school is admirable, and we thank you so much for that hard work that you have done. I know myself popped in a couple schools in the middle of the summer and you just go, wow, how are they ever going to pull this off? You walk in, the floors are shining, the kids must walk in and just think they're walking into paradise. So thank you very much for the hard work that you put in. Also, I want to thank the office staff. I know that the work that you do every day is incredibly invaluable, but the work you do during the summer, which no one really notices in the last couple of weeks before school, it's a lot of work to prepare for those kids. So on behalf of the board, thanks to everyone that has done what they've done to make our kids feel welcome as they come back. All right, saying that, I'm going to ask us to rise for the singing of O Canada. Director Patterson, I'll ask you to do roll call.
Thank you. Trustee Armour? Present. First Vice Chair Karkner? Present. Trustee Cram?
Present.
Trustee Garrow?
Present.
Trustee Bill McPherson?
Present.
Trustee Wendy McPherson?
Present.
Trustee McAllister?
Present.
Second Vice Chair McDonald?
Present.
Chair McMillan?
Present.
Trustee Richards?
Present.
Trustee Swan?
Present.
Student Trustee Alex McIsaac?
Present.
Thank you. I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approved consent agenda items 3.02 to 3.03, September 9th, 2015, moved by Trustee Wendy McPherson, seconded by Trustee Susan Richards. And cast your votes, please. Trustee Garrow, Trustee Swan, I assume you're in favor?
I'm in favor.
Thank you very much. Conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest? Seeing there are none, There was a report from private session, June the 17th, 2015. That takes us back in time a bit. During that time, there was one contractual matter and one personnel matter was discussed. There were no recommendations that were brought forward to the board. So that moves us to our first discussion action item, which is the supervised alternative learning cell. And I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Tim Mills, who will introduce Rob Courier, Principal of Safe Schools.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to introduce Rob Courier. I want to welcome Rob to his new system role as Principal of Safe Schools. Included in his portfolio is supervised alternative learning, which we're going to talk about tonight, along with Safe Schools, Section 23, special transportation, and other items. Through you, Mr. Chair, you will recall that in May, I gave an update regarding supervised alternative learning. At that time, it was discussed about coming back to the table with policy. I want to thank Rob, along with Trustee Cram, for their work on working together on policy. And also in the attachments tonight, you'll see procedures as well as a brochure for SAL. And at the end, certainly we'd be happy to answer any questions. So an introduction to SAL. First, we need to know that we're committed to providing learning opportunities for all students and alternative learning opportunities, one which is SAL, to increase achievement. And the ultimate goal is to achieve an OSSD, Ontario Secondary School Graduation Diploma. SAL is meant for students aged 14 to 17 that have difficulty succeeding or attending a regular school program, and may be offered under Education Act Regulation 37410. In your package, you will see the attachment there that is supervised alternative learning, the ministry document. And we want to also keep in mind the 4 goals in the Achieving Excellence document. Achieving excellence, ensuring equity, promoting well-being, and enhancing public confidence. And we really feel that SAL is a component, something that, in addition to what we're already offering, regular day school, another tool in the toolbox. Here are some timelines that I want to remind you. In 2006, Learning to 18, Bill 52 initiative was introduced by the ministry. That created some difficulties because students in the past had dropped out at 16, and there was a gap there for some students, 17, 18, or 16, 17-year-olds especially. We needed another alternative. So the ministry brought forward SAL, or Supervised Alternative Learning. At that time, and until February, it was the decision that Upper Canada did not offer SAL. In February, you'll recall that we did a soft entry into SAL through TR Léger. There was no extra cost incurred with existing staff. After reviewing that and the policy that's required, what we're going to present to you now is the vision, but also the policy for full implementation of SAL. You see 4 areas there why a student may require SAL. There may be more, but generally it's related either to family situation, economics, could be personal, behavior, mental health, or the school experience. A student may not be succeeding, and SAL is an option. The intention of SAL is that it's to be used for a very small segment of the school population. The age is 14 to 17. We have to be mindful to offer other strategies, and it's not necessarily a last resort, but it's not meant for hundreds of students. Students excused from full-time attendance by the SAL committee will participate in 1 or more approved activities, and I'm going to talk about the SAL committee later. The activities there, credit or non-credit courses, training, employment, volunteering, or counseling. And of important note here is to follow the student on a learning plan, and they need to be monitored regularly. The goals of SAL, we need to maintain contact with the student. It's not to just send the student out and not maintain contact, and that they're supervised. We want the student to progress towards graduation and in many cases be re-engaged, stay engaged with the homeschool, but also get back into the mainstream if possible. To offer a program that's in the student's best interest. And to enable, I'll talk about procedure after, but we want them to be able to go back with a smooth transition into regular day school if possible. The SAL committee, we have set up regular meetings. So I want to talk about the composition. So one board trustee, which will be Trustee Cram. A supervisory officer who is qualified as a teacher or designate, so that will be me or Rob Courier. And a community member, and we have a commitment from Laurencrest, which is a facility for young offenders through Youth Justice in Cornwall. They have identified a staff member and a designate, so we now have a committee set. We'll meet on the fourth Thursday of each month. It's published. And the committee approves or denies SAL requests for students, approval for modifications to SAL plans, and suggestions for revisions to SAL plans for students. Just a reminder in terms of funding for SAL. SAL pupils are recorded as full-time if they have an average of at least 70 minutes of classroom instruction per school day, and that will include co-op, regular day school course at the home school or TR, alternative site, and includes e-learning. And half-time funding, less than 70 minutes of classroom, or if they're taking continuing ed or independent study. There are some links there that you can access ministry policy, the Achieving Excellence document. And again, I want to thank Trustee Cram and Rob Courier for the great work they did in bringing this forward. I encourage you to check out the brochure. We've also released memo and talk to all day school principals about the new format for SAL on the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Comments, questions? Trustee Bill McPherson.
Comparing this to the old SAIL-UP program, is there more of an academic element to this than the old SAIL-UP program? Through the chair, please.
Through you, Chair. I would say yes, compared to the old SAIL-UP. We certainly, as you can see from Mr. Mills' presentation, students need to be involved with an average of 70 minutes. So you'll see most of the students are taking 1 or 2 courses when they're in the SAL program, which certainly will help progress them towards the graduation diploma sooner.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments? Questions? Trustee McAllister?
Tim or Rob, I wonder if you could talk to us about the logistics of having a student enrolled in the SAL program. My understanding is that the student is still associated with his or her primary school. What's the role of the teacher and the EAs and any other support staff previously associated with this student?
Through you, Chair. So for example, if a student in 2 weeks is registered at day school, we can identify a course that they remain on that course register. We can engage the certainly the classroom teacher can still assume responsibility for the teacher and count on the register there, but also engage other staff, whether it's guidance, resource teacher, admin staff, to stay in contact with the student.
Supplementary, please.
Go ahead.
So who has the primary responsibility for the student?
The
The
home
teacher from whose class?
that the
he or she
student
is
is
left?
registered in.
Yes. Okay.
Any other comments? Trustee Karkner?
Through you, Chair, do we have students enrolled in this program already since it began back in February?
Through you, Chair. Yes, the TR Leger School was part of the pilot project and had 53 students registered in it from last February to last June.
Certainly.
So there's nothing, it's just school starting. We have no one right now who is going to be on this program right away.
Through you, Chair. Yes, we anticipate approximately, I would say 10 to 12 students that will have renewals, SAL renewals, and 1 or 2 new SAL requests at our upcoming meeting on Wednesday, September 23rd.
Thank you.
Trustee Cram?
Thanks, Trustee McMillan. Just to further that, Trustee Karkner, because it's the policy of SAL really hasn't been approved yet by the board. That's what's coming tonight. There's no formal students into SAL right now, and we are anticipating, as Rob said, by September 23rd, we'll have the formal application and admittance into SAL done by then.
Trustee McAllister?
Rob, a student who is registered in the supervised alternative learning program, am I right in assuming that he or she may come back to the school, for example, even on a daily basis for co-op, sports, clubs, etc.?
Through you, Chair. Yes, that's one of the great things about SAL is that connection to home school. They can attend every day for 1, 2, 3 periods. They can come back and participate in extracurricular activities, whatever that may be, whether it's art club or sports, whatever that may be. Yes. And as supplemental to your question earlier, through you, Chair, there's a primary contact person for each SAL student, and they're the person that's responsible to keeping contact, maintaining contact with the student, and ensuring that they're doing well in the program. And that primary contact person will then report back to the principal and the student success committee at the school.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Anyone on the telephone lines? Trustee Swan, Trustee Garrow?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay.
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, seeing there are no other comments or questions, we have a policy, we have it in the draft format. Should be on your page. I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approve Supervised Alternative Learning Cell Policy 140 as presented September the 9th, 2015. Moved by Trustee Cram, seconded by
Darrell?
Trustee Garrow. Thank you. I'll ask you to cast your votes, please.
It's not coming up here. I'm in favor.
In favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Trustee Cram, thank you for the work you've done that. Superintendent Mills, Rob, thank you very much for the work you put into this. I know there's been a lot of work during the summertime, and we were excited to see what is the next step in this. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on our list, special education plan, and this was something that we probably should have had come to us at the very end of the school year. However, that being said, we have the permission to bring it forward now. And so I want to turn this over to Superintendent Valerie Allen.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm pleased to present you with the special education plan for 2015-16 year. We did get an official deferral from the Ministry of Education due to our change in our staffing process and the meetings that we had throughout the year this year. SEAC was provided an opportunity to provide to review the annual SEAC plan on May 5th at the regular meeting, at May 26th at a special working meeting, and on June 2nd at a regular meeting. After the June 2nd meeting, SEAC passed the motion, although it did not approve the plan. The motion stated, moved by Melinda Long and seconded by Kimberly Wright, that SEAC receive the 2015 Special Education Plan as presented on June 2nd. SEAC does not support the special education funding reductions, although it respects the efforts of the superintendent and the team to minimize the impact on the funding cuts to students in the classroom, and that was carried. After the staffing process was completed in the month of June, we did have a follow-up conference call in early July with the SEAC members to give them the specific numbers of some of the a couple of the positions that we weren't able to do because of the staffing process. The plan that you see attached in your agenda includes the staffing changes that resulted from the reorganization of the Special Education Department, and this reorganization is in line with our current funding model with the support of other departments in the board. These changes are reflected specifically, the changes in the plan are specifically reflected in page 36 and 37 of the plan that shows the staffing. The staffing changes we have a commitment to minimal impact on school and classroom special education teachers, a consistent level of educational assistance support in our schools, and 2 system positions decreased due to attrition. One is a speech language assistant and one was a special services counselor. The specialized professionals and paraprofessionals have remained the same allocations as last year. The remainder of the staffing changes are based at the system level with itinerant teachers and itinerant support staff. With our school-based model of support and intervention, system staff are working directly in schools on a daily basis, and they support small clusters of 4 to 6 schools. One of the new roles is the learning partner, which are teachers who assist teams of teachers with instruction, differentiation, and supporting school goals to reach towards student achievement for all students. The student support partner, which is the second new role in the plan, work with in the same cluster model, and their work is to increase social, emotional, and behavioral functioning for all students in support of student achievement. Again, the student support partners have a role in every school, and they support small clusters of 4 to 6 schools. Both the learning partners and the student support partners can work with school teams, with classroom groupings, and with small individual students, and most importantly, alongside our school-based staff. The only other changes in the plan reflect the title changes as per these new roles, and we also realigned the appendices as in the so that they are numbered sequentially, filling in the gaps from previous appendixes over the years that were removed. So we just moved everything up and did not change any of the content in those appendixes, but moved them up so the numbers were sequential. So trustees, this is the special education plan for 2015.
Thank you. Questions or comments? I was waiting for that hand to come up, Trustee Graham. Go ahead.
In the plan itself, through you, Chair, in the plan itself on page 5, one of the goals still to be implemented was the special education cabinet. And I'm just wondering if we can have an update as to where we are implementing that plan, that part of the plan.
Through you, Chair, The Special Education Cabinet was one of the recommendations from the previous school review of the special education review that happened in 2012. At this point, we haven't implemented a special education cabinet, but that's something we can bring back to SEAC and have a look at when moving forward this year.
Comments, questions? Trustee Wendy McPherson?
So there's no time, you haven't set a time for when we're going to assemble a cabinet to deal with, just through SEAC is your...
I think that would be, through you, Chair, I think that would be our first place to go with that recommendation. It was a recommendation it was a suggestion brought forward through the external auditors who brought the special education plan to review to our board.
Other questions, comments? Trustee McAllister?
Thank you. Val, it's no secret that this plan differs from the past. There have been staffing changes, and there has been significant concern expressed amongst parents and staff about the ability of the plan to meet the needs of the students as they were met last year with the former CYWs. What metrics are in place to measure the way in which the plan is addressing the needs of these students?
Through you, Chair. It's a really good question, and you're right. There has been a lot of angst, in particular around the student support partner role, that new role within our system. I think part of the angst has been with the CYW role not being there anymore. There was a perception that there would be no support in the school. Not everyone understood that there was a new role to support that. The metrics that are in place, we, with the assistance of Superintendent Susan Edwards and our two chief psychologists, have formed a mental health advisory group that there is representation from each of the families of schools, and they're meeting on a regular basis to do exactly that. Look at what the referrals are and what are the issues across our system, and ensuring that we are addressing what those issues are. The metric, another piece of the metrics will be referrals and cases that come forward within our system, and how are we addressing those. And our chief psychologists will really play a key role in that, and they are directly supervising all of our student support partners.
Partner?
To follow up with the question from Trustee McAllister, that program with your chief psychologist and the team that they have created, when we as a board had requested that we get feedback on a regular basis about the education plan, what is the timeline that has been set up from this committee to report back to us so that we are aware of whether it's being successful or not, or it needs tweaking?
Right. I think that we could bring that back on a regular basis to the board if that's was needed, if that's what the trustees are looking for. Through you, Chair, sorry.
So by regular, are we looking at after your meeting that the psychologist has, or?
I would suggest quarterly. Superintendent Edwards, do you want to?
Yeah, through your Chair, that's a really good question. And one of the things we have implemented in terms of helping with our mental health board plan, as well as serving our students differently, is we have implemented and put together a student well-being and mental health planning advisory circle. So we did meet here just prior to the start of school, sent out an invitation to principals, and have 20 principals sitting around the table. Very robust day. Our two chief psychologists and Director Patterson was there, as well as Superintendent Val Allen. So we have a number of items on the table, as well as bringing them along and helping to measure how we're doing and delivering services differently. as well as where we're moving with our student support mental health plan. So bringing information back to you and the information that you want to see where we're going. We're having a link call. We have link calls about once every 2 weeks and face-to-face meetings once a month with this group as we're starting out. So to bring information back to you, we'll certainly do that. How you would like that, whether you'd like through forms of minutes or whether you'd like presentation at the board or information coming back here. I'm wondering if that can be discussed at a further time. We had a full day meeting about with our 20 principals. Lots of good plans. We have a new structure in place. We have feedback mechanisms for that, for monitoring that. It's just second day of school as we're rolling out, so it's a little early to see that right now, but we certainly can bring the type of information back to you in whichever format you would like.
Just to kind of reflect back on this discussion, I'm just going to speak through the director. I know that when we were discussing this plan prior to the end of the school year, and especially at budget time, I know that we, as the Board of Trustees, were asking for close monitoring and measurables to make sure that this plan that is in place is backed by evidence-based decision making and evidence that proves that the change in the plan is working, and that we would be able to, or you would be able to make sure that adjustments would be made. So the question, I certainly understand your question. We're looking for, we're reassuring really our constituents and everyone involved that this is closely being monitored, and we want to make sure that it is being monitored. So what I guess I'm saying to you as the director is it's not acceptable, I think, for us to say, when do you want it back? It's a matter of nailing it down and having very specifics on that.
May I respond?
You certainly can.
There are some obvious metrics that can be easily provided to you, which I think they are informative. They would be things like student partner and student contact time, number of students seen on the roster, cases that are closed, et cetera. Now, that can get very detailed, and I'm not sure that that's exactly what you would be looking for. It's what we're interested in, because we want to make sure, and we're quite confident that that's going to happen, that the students are served as well, or in fact better than they were served previously. If I can take the example of the behaviorist, in the previous role, they didn't work directly with students. They helped teachers and principals develop safety plans. They did not work with students. So we now have a roster of student support partners who work directly with students. So I dare say, and also in small clusters. So I dare say the employee-student contact time will increase by virtue of the change in role of the behaviorists. So I think that those kinds of metrics are easily produced and captured and produced. I think that the ones that are more challenging for us is more the qualitative or the subjective measurements, metrics that we might want to capture, which it somehow details the progress or the outcome for the student, having worked with the student success partner and other psych services personnel as well. So I think that would be the more challenging piece, and but certainly there's some pretty basic statistics that we can provide quite readily. I can't say we can provide them on the second day of school because they haven't had a chance to work with students yet, but as we go along, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Trustee Bill McPherson? Thank you.
One question and a comment. First, a comment. These adjustments were necessary as a result of the reduction of our high needs amounts for special ed funding, which I believe somewhere in the range of $4 to $4.5 million. not a popular move, but we're getting less money for special education. I think we have to bear that in mind. The question would be, especially given the concerns of the SEAC committee as indicated in their motion, would be, could SEAC be included in part of this reporting process? Say maybe an update when the superintendent's giving their report. As we as a board are monitoring this process, would it be beneficial to have SEAC kind of have a look at it when it's going by, so to speak? And I'll direct that to the chair.
I know, having looked at the report, Superintendent Allen, that SEAC has mentioned a lot in that report, and their involvement or their consultation with them and reports going to them is made very clear in what you've outlined. So I think most definitely SEAC should be consulted, and then from SEAC being consulted, it would come back to us in the report of a recommendation or coming back to us in terms of what you have understood as SEAC. But SEAC is there's no question SEAC plays a critical role in the consultation part of this and the understanding. They have the people on that committee that have the specialized expertise to be able to ask probably probing questions in that form and then bring it back to us as an advisory group. Having said that, I turn it over to Superintendent Allen to finish off that part of
Through you,
it.
Chair, I totally concur, and the statistics that we would bring to the board, we would vet through SEAC first, as they are representatives of many organizations that have a vested interest in this work.
Trustee McAllister, then Trustee McConnell. Trustee Tran.
I sincerely hope that this special education plan succeeds and addresses the needs of our students. We have talked previously here about timely reporting to the board, and quarterly reports were indicated. Given the nature of the changes, I'm requesting that there be a report at the first meeting in October. I'm not looking for a whole bunch of data. I'm looking for a broad brush. In other words, maybe some impressions from principals and staff and students themselves. I would like to see that, so that we have some indication that is this working, is it not working? And it should be pretty evident in the first month, in my opinion. And quarterly reports thereafter would suffice for me. But I would also like to suggest strongly that at some point in the future, whenever we do the Tell Them From Me survey, that part of that survey deal with student impressions of, we would like to hear what they have to say. So,
Trustee McAllister, if you're going to bring that forward as a motion, can we bring that back? We'll have some more discussion, more comments, and bring that back at the end of the discussions. You fine with that?
okay.
Trustee Kartner?
I would also like to see the parents' comments that are coming forward. I know that there's going to be lots of discussion with parents as to the placement of the children and the supports they will be getting. Now, we may be hearing or may have already heard negatives from parents in some of our messages we've received as trustees. So I think if we get the parents' voice as well, both sides, the good and the bad, and how it's been resolved, basically, the change of attitude perhaps. So in that same report, something along those lines would be.
Trustee McDonald?
I have two issues I want to raise. I can appreciate the fact that we want to have data and we want to make sure that we see the information, but I'm not sure what we were going to see or what we're asking to see. I'm not sure what we collected previously. So what are we going to benchmark it against? If we don't have original data and we receive something in October, what's it going to look like, and how do we know whether it's successful or not? I want to remind trustees, this is not something that we did because we thought it was a grand idea, and no disrespect to staff. It was something that we did out of a necessity. It was a monetary issue that we had to deal with, that we had to move forward. And so as much as something may not work, and we may have some anecdotal information to say it doesn't work, what are we going to do? What changes are we going to make financially so that we can then make changes to what we propose through the spec ed side of things? Those are things that we've got to think about. Those are the things that we've got to be prepared to deal with if we get information that supports some of our thoughts, I guess, at this point. Secondly, as I said, it was a financial situation that we had to deal with as a result of reduction in funding from the ministry. So they've changed the rules. They've said, this is now how you're going to get the money. In order to get some additional money, they've relied on a new set of criteria, which is outdated, as we know. It's based on census data. I would encourage and hope that SEAC, as much as they've worded their motion in such a way, they really affected, in essence, have supported the plan by passing the motion. The comments about their funding reduction are great, but what's next? What's SEAC going to do next to help us with that and to make some noise, I guess, through the province? Because as much as we've got a reduction, we are going to get hit even further, because we know that a lot of our spec ed money dealt with kids who potentially were not on the spectrum. Okay, they were not identified IPRC kids. They were kids that we had other issues with, that we could IEP, that we could help behavior issues with. We know that money helps support those kids. And with the reduction, we're left to other devices to find the money for that. And if we rely on census data is going to give us inaccurate information, because it's out of date, first of all. They've reduced or eliminated the long form census, so it's going to get less information. We're not going to have enough to support the needs of students in Upper Canada. And so I think as a board and as SEAC, we need to make sure that we start looking at what's next steps. We've swallowed the bitter pill now, the Buckley's pill, we think. And now what's the next step to make sure that we are on the road to recovery? Where are we going to find some additional money to help support the needs of kids in Upper Canada?
I know Trustee Cram, you're next, but I'd like to get Trustee Bill McPherson from SEAC to respond to that. So.
In response to Trustee McDonald, SEAC is in the process of drafting a letter. They've been kind of plugging out of all summer, and next Tuesday we will be meeting again. And part of what the issue is that we did face a cut last year, but it was absorbed through the general board budget. So we are actually into the second year of reductions, but this is the year where the full impact was felt, because we did not have $3 million to throw at it this year. And even so, the board did subsidize the deficit by a certain amount this year. So they are sending a letter to the ministry. It will probably come to the board as well. But bearing in mind that we're now into the second year of these reductions. So what effect it has remains to be seen, because provincially, just ballparking, half of the boards in Ontario are facing reductions in the high needs amount, and the other half have seen a benefit from this adjustment of the funding. So it's certainly not a province-wide issue. The ones that are hollering are the ones like ourselves that have found ourselves on the short end of the equation, so to speak. And but that's just my response, Trustee.
Thank you. Trustee Cram.
Thank you, Chair. Trustee McDonald's question sort of led into a good segue to what I was going to be suggesting. Page 45 of that report does give the role of SEAC, and I would encourage SEAC to start to make, I think it's the second one, sends motions and recommendations to the board, and also they are to look at the review the areas of exceptionality. They provide advice to the committee of the board. So I would be encouraging SEAC at this point to start looking forward as to what possibilities they could help us recommend for the next budget year. And we know that there'll be another deficit next year. So perhaps we can all get on board and get ahead of this game rather than behind it.
Thank you, Trustee Cram. Any other comments or questions? I'm going to come back to Trustee McAllister. I do believe, before we get into this discussion, that Trustee McDonald has a very strong point. I was thinking this myself in the fact that we can ask for data, but there is no baseline to measure it against. That being said, that does not mean that the Board of Trustees does not want to continue to see something being monitored. To put it in terms, when we talk about key result indicators, we're really, even though this is an operational side of things, we're assuming and hoping that there are key performance indicators in that are going to make adjustments to the plan as it continues to unfold. I think what we are looking for as a Board of Trustees as assurance that the money that we have put in to special education and into that part of the budget, that it's actually meeting the needs of our students. And when we look at it through that governance lens, then it's very important that data does come back to us to give us the confidence that that money has been spent in a way that's going to meet the needs of our kids, or perhaps we may have to look at the budget and make adjustments to either give more in that area, but we can't make that decision without having that data come to us. So, being fully aware that we don't have the baseline measurables to measure it against, the data may not mean anything to us. But I think the fact that the confidence would be there for us to know that the measurables are in place certainly is going to help in terms of confidence from the Board of Trustees, knowing that the budget decisions that we made, which were tough at the time, are certainly going to meet the needs of our students. Having said that, Trustee McAllister, I'm going to pass that back to you if you want to bring a motion forward.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate Trustee McDonald's concerns with regard to the lack of baselines and data, etc. I do believe, though, that it's incumbent upon us to be assured that the monies, the resources that we have allocated in our budget are at least touching and addressing the needs of our students. So for that reason, I am proposing the following motion, be it resolved that an interim report from the program department, I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, is it?
Teaching and learning.
Teaching and learning,
Yeah.
be provided at I'm going to say the second meeting of the board in October 2015. And if I could speak to my motion.
You certainly can.
I'm not looking for a lot of data, personally. What I am looking for is a snapshot, some sort of feedback that this is working, or if it's not, then we need to know right away. And so that adjustments of some sort can be made either to financing or resources. So that is, and I'm also suggesting the second meeting in October, simply because that would give Superintendent Allen an opportunity to address SEAC with what she is going to bring to the board. And I think SEAC should be consulted.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is read your motion. We'll see if we can get a seconder to that, and then we can have some more discussion on this.
Okay.
So be it resolved that an interim report from Teaching and Learning Department be provided at the second board meeting, the second meeting of the board in October 2015. Moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee Karkner. So I'd like to get into comments or questions at this point. Trustee McDonald?
I want you to, Mr. Chair, I want to be clear. I think it's important that we receive information, but I'm just saying it's going to make our job very difficult, I think, to judge whether something's been effective or not effective. And I also am concerned that it's a big scope. And I think some of us have particular concerns over certain areas. And so, as a spec ed department, or as a plan that's been initiated, a lot of things have changed. And I think we may see some changes in areas that will have no impact or positive impact, and we have some areas that may have some negative impact or no impact whatsoever. So, I think in general terms, we're going to get an overview of what we see from a department perspective, but really, when I think it comes down to it, most of us have received comments and concerns from the public about certain areas. And that, generally seems to be around one function within a school. And so should we report or should we receive information specific to that function, to that type of work that was being conducted? Are we overly concerned with the entire rescope, I guess, or rejigging of the spec ed side of things. I think that's something we should consider. But I also think it's going to be very difficult for us to judge whether something's been effective or not without knowing the details prior, right? I mean, I'll give you an example. One of the jobs we know about are individuals dealing with kids who have difficult times, who might have thoughts of different perspectives, and they would disclose those things to those particular job functions. We don't know whether we track that effectively or not. And so, should we be tracking that effectively? Is that a situation where we're disclosing too much information on a student? So we've got to be careful that maybe we're asking for something that is never going to give us an answer that we're actually going to be satisfied with. It's fine to get the data, but I guess I'm cautiously optimistic that maybe we'll get something that we can hang our hat on and say, okay, I think we've done something good, or no, we haven't. We got to do something different. So, I'll hold that out, but I also want to make sure, or let my colleagues understand that maybe we need to focus in on a specific area so that we identify that and get the information in that particular area that we've all received information on.
Thank you, Trustee McDonald. Comments or questions on the motion?
Yeah, I'll speak to the motion. My concern over this is that on the grander scale of things, this has been a small adjustment. It's to accommodate a distinctively high cut in one section of the board, the special ed funding. As a trustee, I've sat here for, I guess it's now closing on 15 years. And we have made a great many changes in those 15 years. And change is always difficult. But we did not monitor, like when we moved to the 7 to 12 modeling, we didn't set up a process where we had bi-monthly reports. We made a change based upon the information given to us by our professional staff. And again, going back to May and June, sitting as a member of SEAC, sitting as a trustee, these decisions were not easy. They were difficult decisions to make. Anytime you have to cut funding or service, it is difficult. And I honestly think that October is too soon. We've got to give it at least another month. If you want this report to go to SEAC first, you're going to shorten the time frame by a good 2 weeks, because we meet the first Tuesday of each month. The board meeting is on the second, or is it the third? No. Fourth Wednesday. Right? So you're going to shorten the time frame by 3 weeks for the professional staff. And if we want this report to have some validity, we've got to give them time to have some data. Like right now we're going to be talking 8 weeks into the school year. Give them a little more time, know what we're looking for, and accepting the fact that sometimes change is necessary. And we did not make this decision lightly. We had plan A, B, and C, and we looked at a great many possibilities. And bottom line is that the spec ed budget is still subsidized by the board to the tune of roughly $1.5 million. So if you reverse this, where are you going to cut? And we don't have a money tree out in the backyard. So I would support this if you move it to November to give time have enough data there to look at, and to be fair to the staff to say, if this is going to SEAC in November, to at least have time to come up with a substantial report, something that actually has some validity to it. That's just my comment.
Thank you. Anyone on the phone lines? I'm sorry, I haven't been calling upon you. Okay, thank you. And Trustee Carton, did you have a question?
I'm okay with changing it to November, because it is true, the timeline would be rather tight to go back to SEAC, being only 1 month until your next meeting. But I want to remind all the trustees that we made a commitment to approve this plan, to go with it, with the statement that we would keep our eyes on it very closely. So I think the only way we can do that is to expect some kind of report back. And if it's November, so be it. But I wasn't around when we did the 7 to 12 changes. I don't know what the motions read at that point. But we made a commitment to the public about following up with this plan and making sure that it was working and then doing something if it wasn't. What that something might have to be, let's hope it's not. Maybe it's going to be a great plan and everything will work out just the way we want it to. But I think we made a commitment to the public initially. We have to follow through with that.
Any other comments? Trustee McAllister?
If it's the will of the board, I would certainly be willing to move that date to November, somewhat reluctantly, because nevertheless, I think we have students to consider.
I believe that most of the concern expressed has been with regard to the loss of the CYWs. And I think in many cases there hasn't been an understanding that that role has been replaced with the student support partners. So I guess the clarification I'm seeking is, are you looking for a report back on all aspects of the special education restructuring, or specifically the role of the service levels that we have provided and the success of those as it relates to the student support partner?
And I think Director Patterson, you're very wise to make that point. I mean, this is, I think, something that we have discussed in the past about making what we are requesting very specific, so it helps the senior team be able to get at exactly what we're getting at. So when I'm looking at the term an interim report, I guess I'm paying close attention to Trustee McDonald in terms of if we were to ask for a report grand scale, we're probably not going to really address the concerns that are coming to us as trustees. So I'm wondering, Trustee McAllister, if we can be a little more specific, or you may not think there is a need, and we'll certainly bring it forward as a motion. If you think at this point, or anyone in the room would like to be part of the discussion, the trustees, if we could narrow down maybe a little more specific on that interim report. We certainly as a board are going to be asking for updates in terms of the plan on a quarterly basis. What we're really looking at here, if I understand you correctly here, is to get an early indication that all is well in terms of some of the changes that are taking place, especially in those areas of our most at-risk kids. That's just my thinking on that, but I'm going to turn it over to you.
No, I think both Trustee McDonald and Director Patterson have pinpointed an important part. I'm not looking for an interim report on the whole plan. I'm looking at interim report, particularly dealing with the service that we are providing to our students. And if that means narrowing it down to the success of I call it success, but the success of the student support partners and maybe the itinerant student support workers, so be it. That would satisfy me as an interim report.
Trustee Richards. You knew I was looking over at you, didn't you?
The spec ed plan that you see in front of you is a lot more than that restructuring that we did through the budget process. And I think we're kind of getting way off base. The spec ed plan talks about the identification, the programs, the staffing. The question that I see around the table is how well is the reorganization that we did, but that's not really in the spec ed plan. There's just a description of what that person does and how many. So yeah. I think the spec ed plan needs to be approved, and then I think that we need to ask for regular updates, maybe in November, December, on how the reorganization of those staff members, the special support, yes, the partners, and we have to get used to that, how that's working in our schools.
Okay, so there's one very clear motion on the table, and that's to to approve the special education plan. So, on your guidance,
I think we
I'm going to come
approve.
back to this motion, but I'm going to get this motion off the table if everyone's okay with that. And thanks for bringing that to my attention. I knew you were waiting to get something in. Okay, so the initial motion I have before me is that the Upper Canada District School Board approve the 2015 Special Education Plan as presented September the 9th, 2015. Moved by Trustee Bill McPherson, seconded by Trustee Susan Richard. And I'll ask you to cast your votes. Trustee Cartner, yes. Trustee Cram? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. So, that is out of the way. So I'm going to go back to the discussion we were having in terms of a report. Trustee McAllister, it's back into your capable hands.
Well, the motion, the motion is being resolved that an interim report from the program, from the Teaching and Learning Department be provided at the first meeting of the board. Obviously, it concerns the plan, but I think we have narrowed it down to the service element of the plan, if we can incorporate those words.
Organizational changes.
Would that satisfy your wording?
I don't know if the spec ed plan needs to be in there. It's about the restructuring of this student support services, specifically around the staffing. I don't know if the word spec ed plan needs to be in there.
It wasn't.
Oh, you said plan.
Trustee Bill McPherson?
Bear in mind that the restructuring was approved by the Board of Trustees and as part of our budgeting process. And that information, when it was incorporated, was then passed to SEAC as an information item only. They were never asked to vote on the specific motion to restructure. It came to them as an information session over the telephone because it was delicate information at the time. And because they are an arm's length committee of the board, it had to be dealt with differently than spec ed plans in the past.
Okay. Trustee McDonald, do you have something you want to say? All right, I'm just going to read the motion as it is before me. Be it resolved that an interim report specifically on the reorganization of the service elements from the Teaching and Learning Department be provided at the first meeting of the board in November 2015. Before we go any further with this, I need to know if that is clear, Director, in terms of what the trustees are asking for. And if not, please tell us.
So to me, there would be two things there. One is, are we talking specifically about special education service delivery? Because I don't have the wording in front of me, but teaching and learning service delivery, that could also include the program components as well. So then the scope widens. So are we interested in the special education, the service delivery of special education under the new restructured model? And so hence I'm thinking we're going to reference our learning partners who support special education, our student support partners who support the emotional and mental well-being of our students, our itinerant support workers, etc. So all of those special education roles that are identified in the special education plan, but elsewhere as well.
I could ask you a question.
Trustee McAllister.
I'm not personally looking for a review of the plan. But nevertheless, in the plan, reference is made to the student support workers, etc. And these student support workers deal with many students other than especially identified spec ed students, right?
Yes.
And I think I'm looking at
Yes,
that as
okay,
well.
all right. Through the special education lens.
Yes.
Thank you. Clear to me.
He's not-
I hope this isn't an indication of the way this year is going to unfold. I certainly, I'm jesting, but I understand what it is you're getting at. It's just a matter of us getting the wording down so it's very clear to the director and the senior team exactly what we're asking for. So please don't think I'm making light of this. So I have informed me. Be it resolved that an interim report specifically on the reorganization of the service delivery through the special education lens from the Teaching and Learning Department be provided at the first meeting of the board in November 2015. Trustee McAllister, does that?
That satisfies my need.
Trustee Cram and then Trustee Bill McPherson?
Chair, I hate to ask this question.
A friendly amendment?
No. My concern is through the special education lens, and what does that particularly mean? Because I believe that may exclude the students who aren't part of the spec ed program. The regular students who may be taking advantage of the student support personnel. And if we take it just through spec ed lens, are we then only talking about the spec ed students who are there? That's where I want some clarification on that wording.
Director.
I understand that because the student support partners work out of the psychological services department, which is under special education. You are correct. Student support partners, CYWs before them, served students whether they were identified or not. They served students who had, and they will continue to do so, who had emotional and mental well-being issues. So the fact of the matter is the personnel are part of the special education department, but they serve students who need their support.
Trustee Bill McPherson.
Not going to muddy the water anymore, but I think we need to reflect back on our spec ed philosophy here, and it all means all. An awful lot of what we do for special education does not necessarily go specifically, it's to support all students. So if we're going to monitor this, and I'm going back to a few years ago when we had made substantial cuts in staffing due to government funding. And I think the phrase that was used then was, did we retain the capacity to meet emerging needs? In other words, take a snapshot of what's in the school. Talk to the people that could tell you whether or not we're experiencing shortfalls. And then use the capacity to meeting the emerging needs as your lens for that picture. And report back to us and say, yes, we're meeting the needs. Because there is some improvement in this, because not all schools enjoyed a community youth and youth worker. There were schools that did not have that support. And yet we were quite proud of the fact that we were delivering to some of our schools a very vital part of that school atmosphere. What we've done here is to try to be financially responsible to meet a financial commitment, but at the same time trying to offer a better level of service. So yes, we did make some changes. We've made changes in the past. We have looked at things in the past, and that's all we have to do here is, are we meeting the needs of our students? Don't separate the ones that have an IPRC from the kid that's having a bad day and needs to talk to somebody at the school. So if we keep the matrix simple, that we can get the information we need in November and share that information with SEAC as part of the superintendent's report.
Trustee McAllister.
Call the question, please.
I had a comment.
Trustee Richards.
I would like to see us just make it really simple and ask Val to come back with a report in November on how the new student support partner position is working.
Thank you, yeah.
It's like, that's the one we have the question about. So why don't we just make it simple and she comes back in November and tells us how it's working, how it's doing in the schools, and
If there's anything else, will come through SEAC.
and we can ask SEAC at the meeting on Tuesday. Bill can ask SEAC to also come back with information from their parents on how they feel it's working or not working, and then that will all come here to a meeting, and maybe we'll get some clearer vision of what is happening.
Trustee McAllister.
I would suggest that that was the intent of my motion, and I think it will fulfill that particular need.
Director, does that clarify the focus?
Yes, it narrows it and certainly clarifies it. As I understand it, we're focusing on the student support partner.
All right, so I'm going to still read the motion, but you understand the intent of the motion. Thank you, Trustee Richards. Be it resolved. Oh.
Uh-oh.
We weren't, but,
You said no.
pardon me?
You said no.
No, we weren't going to, but is it still there? We back to where it was? Patience. Patience.
Can you get me one too?
That's what happens, we don't get a very big agenda.
Simple. That's what Susan said.
Okay, I have a motion before me, moved by Trustee John McAllister, seconded by Trustee Carol Kirkner. Be it resolved that an interim report specifically on the reorganization of the service elements through the special education land from the Teaching and Learning Department be provided at the first meeting of the board in November 2015. I will ask you to cast your votes, and I know Trustee Cran, before he left, is in favor. And that carries unanimously. I thank everyone for the very rich discussion. And Director, you're clear on that, so
Good, thank you.
great. Okay, moving on to the next item on our list. This is a standing item, which is a status update on the selection and recruitment of the Director of Education. What I would like to begin with is thanking the trustees for their dedication and commitment to this process. People have your dedication and working together as a team has been very powerful. To say where we are in the process is very clear. We're still in the process. A decision has not been made as of this point, and we are continuing in our process of digging deeper with our candidates to get a clearer understanding of who they are and how they can best serve the needs of our organization. So there really is nothing more to report. I can assure you that the moment a decision is made, that after we have dealt with the things that we have to do as a board, that we will make it public. And so at this point, there's not much more to say other than the fact that I'm very proud of the hard work that the trustees have done up to this point. Moving on, we have another item that I'm going to ask Director David McDonald to give us a report on the Ontario Public School Board Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm used to squeezing this in under the deadline, so I'm thankful for 2 hours to be able to present this evening. I've got a 50-point PowerPoint here for you. Actually, I have four key issues I just want to highlight for an update from OPSPA. OPSPA doesn't typically meet as a board of directors over the course of the summer, but since our AGM, there's been, as you are aware, much activity within the province around labor relations that OPSPA has been involved with, and I'll give you some of that information tonight. It's certainly information that is known in the public and has been reported in the media, so nothing confidential that is going to be reported on. Just an update as well, OPSPA, as I said, as a board of directors does not meet, but the executive meets in the summertime, and generally the weekend after the long weekend in August, they hold their planning session to start to set their directions for some of the priorities that they'll focus on over this coming year. Having said that, the board of directors meeting is coming up is on the 25th and 26th of September, and I'll be happy to attend that one on behalf of this board, and generally Trustee McAllister and Trustee Garrow were there as well, and be able to provide more information back to you after that meeting. Just quickly, from a labor perspective, I mean, we all know that there's a tentative deal with OSSTF across the province. It's yet to be ratified, but it's assuming that hopefully both parties will ratify that and have a final announcement sometime in the next week or two. There's ongoing negotiations with ETFO, as you're all aware. ETFO met last week and are continuing to meet this week. And as you know, ETFO, as well as in the middle of job action as well, they've continued to move forward with phase 2 of their job action. CUPE, some significant changes obviously with CUPE. CUPE is certainly in a position now to begin negotiations, and is also in a position that they're in a legal strike mandate as a result of some actions that have taken place. CUPE as well is also performing job action at this point across the province. But again, we're hopeful that negotiations will continue and move forward to some resolution. OPSPA is very good for providing information to trustees about legislative updates that are happening across the province. 2 things in particular from maybe outside of the province, I guess. OPSPA, through the Canadian School Board Association, is still continuing to monitor what's happening in Quebec. The work that's being done by the Quebec government to potentially remove school board trustees, basically do away with elections and have appointed trustees. The English Language School Board Association in Quebec is heavily involved in monitoring that and trying to advocate on behalf of continuing to have the role of trustee, but more importantly to continue to have an opportunity for an election. The next most significant piece of legislation is really not a piece of legislation per se. It's the fact that as of last week, we are now have the opportunity to have the ombudsman shine in our meetings once in a while and have the ability to respond to complaints from the general public, staff, ourselves, and now have some powers that they didn't have previously. So we look forward to tongue-in-cheek having the ombudsman review and operate our operational side of things as we move forward. As well, OPSPA was busy over the summer. They produced 4 new PD modules, and if you're not familiar, I think we provided those to you on our Board Docs site. Also on the OPSPA site, and they're tremendous PD modules, but the new modules that came out are What Makes a Great Chair, First Nation Trustee Leading in 2 Worlds, Developing a Code of Conduct for Trustees. I didn't look at you, Mr. Chair. And social media. So those are 4 new modules that have been placed by OPSPA in their section. And obviously, that is one of their key works is to promote and provide for the ongoing education for trustees and advocate for the role of trustees. So thankful for the work that they've done to help us in our job, and that is my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on that report? Other than the one about the chair? I saw that module and I thought to myself, I probably should look at that. But those modules, and there are other modules that OPSPA has put out, And I know that when we had the new term, that we made reference to those modules, but I would encourage all trustees, new and not so new, to go back and revisit them every once in a while to kind of clarify what our role is and to make sure that we stay focused on what our role is, because I think the power of any board is the ability to stay focused on what they're to stay focused on. Thank you. Director Patterson, I'd like to turn this over to you for some final remarks.
Thank you very much, Chair McMillan. By all accounts, we've had a very smooth startup this year. And as Chair McMillan said earlier, certainly recognize our frontline staff, our custodians and our office administrators, and of course our teachers and educational assistants and other education workers, and principals and vice principals. But the group that I particularly want to acknowledge this evening are the folks who are sitting at the other end of the table, the senior team of this board. And through their leadership and good thinking and execution, they've worked together in a very collaborative way to support each other and to support the field and, of course, the administrative folks here as well. So on behalf of the Director of Education, I want to acknowledge and thank the senior team for their fine leadership and their good thinking, and may it continue. I also want to highlight one project that the payroll department took a lead on last year, and it's called electronic timesheets. And it's just an example of our efforts on the administrative side to make continuous improvements. This one in particular serves our employees very well, and in so doing serves our students. The outcome of the project is that we have managed to eliminate 45,000 paper timesheets from our usage. So all of our replacement staff, vocational teachers, both elementary and secondary, educational assistants, etc., the data is entered in an accurate and timely way, and there is no need for a paper timesheet anymore. The leadership was a cross-department group of HR and payroll, and relied very heavily on the goodwill and work of office administrators and principals, etc. But I particularly want to recognize Michelle Mounier, who works in the payroll department, and her leadership and commitment to the success of this project was critical, and I think she and her colleagues should be very proud of the work that they've done. And so I look to you, Nancy, Superintendent of Business. Thank you for your leadership in that regard.
Just counting
And
another
that is
20
it.
minutes.
No. Sure.
Okay, so it's my turn. Student trustee McIsaac. Not all meetings are this short. Please don't get used to it. Not going to happen again, I can assure you that. Welcome. We look forward to reports coming to you from the Student Senate. Looking forward to that starting. And we look forward to some input from you as well. So again, as I said in the very beginning, we're thankful you're here, and we look forward to working with you, and you know most of us, so you're a part of our team. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
The beginning of the school year, when you're in a board that's in our situation and the assumption is out there that we have not selected a director yet, sometimes leads people to think, how could you possibly start a school year without having your new director? Well, we have a director. And I think it's very important for everyone to understand that until we get another director, we have someone who's doing an excellent job. So what I want to say really publicly is, Director Patterson, you've been there for us. You've helped us through a tough period in terms of moving us forward. And I want you to know that we have such confidence in what you have been doing and what you continue to do. And until we have someone else sitting beside me, you are our director, and we're proud of that.
Thank you very much.
The other thing that I haven't probably said in the, whatever it's been, 9-10 months I've been chair of the board, is I haven't publicly thanked, and I should, my vice chairs, because the two of them are with me in management council. They're with me when I have something I want to talk to and get my head straightened around. Thank you so much for what you do all the time. You're there when I need you. I value you every day, and I appreciate it. And the last is, when I look around this table and I look at the trustees and I look at the senior team, I'm really glad to be back, because I truly believe that this is going to probably be the most exciting and most rewarding year that lies before us. And yes, we have change, but change is coming. Change always makes us all a little uneasy. But you know, when I look at everyone at this table, I know that as a team, regardless of whether we're operations or we're government, it doesn't matter. As a team, we're going to be strong and we're going to move forward. We're going to welcome the new leadership, and we're going to embrace the role they play. And I know that that person will embrace the role you play. So we as a Board of Trustees, as long as we stay focused on governance and we do our job and stay very focused, and I know there are times it's not easy, but you know, you'll hear me keep saying that. As long as we stay focused on what we are here for, we are going to be a very focused, very powerful, very strong decision-making board that will work in the best interests of everyone in this organization. So I thank you for everything you've done up to this point, but I know there's great things ahead of us. Having said that, it is 7:55. I can't believe it's 7:55. I need a motion that the Upper Canada, the regular meeting and Upper Canada Public Session, Upper Canada District School Board be adjourned at 7:56. That's fast. The next regular meeting is scheduled for September 23rd. Moved by Trustee Cindy McPherson, second by Trustee Bill McPherson. Safe travels, everyone.